You know the magna culture, right? Nobody works for me. You people work with me. I'm working for you. The history of mankind has always been dominated by the golden rule. Here's the gold makes the rule. But I don't want to be dominated by anyone. If I feel that strong, I should not be able to dominate somebody either.
Hello there and welcome. I'm Richard Dolan in conversation with our very own Frank Stronach. As you know, a titan, an icon, a legendary businessman, and a philanthropist. Someone who's not only given time and money, but now his wisdom. And I'm joined here live in another great, courageous conversation. Frank, good to see you, my friend.
The same. Nice to see you too.
Well, it's always been said, it's good to be seen. This is what they say. Now, as you know, and as many of our followers and those who follow this channel and our postings, we always love to start with the current news because it's always so important for us to get your sense of things. But I want to start before we dive deep into one of your passion projects, which I'm most excited about, the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurs. So before we get into the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurs, let's start with the news. I want to read something to you, Frank. I don't know if you've been following the news, but the US tariffs of 25% on Canadian automobiles came into effect April 1st. Now, when that happened, Canada responded by imposing its own 25% tariff on non-CUSMA vehicles. And when we look at that, what happened was non-Canadian content of CUSMA compliant US vehicles on April 9th. Between all those headlines, we're now at a tariff war. This has resulted in hundreds of layoffs and suspension of production in at least 2 auto plants in Ontario. One is the Stellantis plant in Windsor, and the other is General Motors, who you're familiar with, in Ingersoll. Tell me, Frank, how does that land for you, given your history in the auto car and the auto part manufacturing business for the decades you were? What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear of these tariff wars?
Well, first thing what comes to my mind is a major screw up. Okay, that's
putting it simply.
A great technical expression.
That's a good technical, and all of us understand that technical expression. Yeah. But who's at the source? Who's at the source of the screw up?
Well, it is. I think Donald Trump, the president of the United States, I think he should have been a little more selective, right? I sympathize with him. As the president, his number one job would be, or fiduciary duty would be, to create a better life for Americans, right? Okay, and it could have been done maybe a little different, right? So first of all, Canada was always there. When the United States needed extra help, right? We were always there, right? You take World War I, World War II, et cetera, right? And but basically, his the reasoning was that the United States subsidized many countries, and basically says we don't want to do that anymore, right? So it became very specific, and I think, I guess the Canadian politicians should not have been specific because when the United States, we have a tariff of this, specifically percentages, the Canadian politicians said if we do that, we do the same thing, right? Mm. That for that, and that is. That's the wrong thing, yeah, right?
Well, it's amazing that of the many quotes that I've always tracked you in saying, I've got 2 here I want to share with our viewers. One was, you said, the capitalist system has a major flaw. You said that more and more capital is held by fewer and fewer people. And the result is that the divide between the very rich and the working class is getting bigger and bigger. You conclude by saying that this will lead to a great social unrest. I have to say that watching the news for myself, this is more true now than ever before. Do you agree?
Well, it's like if certain things are done, then certain things will follow. You know, if, look, you take a farmer, if he doesn't get any seed, he cannot grow any crops. Okay, makes sense, right?
Makes total sense.
Okay? So where does he get the seed, right? And here in Canada, we have never had an industrial strategy. We should have had an industrial strategy many years ago. So Canada's problem is without skilled labor, you can't make any products. So it's the same thing. If the farmer hasn't got seeds, he cannot harvest a crop.
You know,
And we cannot build things unless we got skilled labor. So every time I watched for the last 20 years or 30 years, there's many buildings gone up, but all warehouses, gigantic warehouses. So we've gone totally away, from making things, and the living standards. Doesn't matter how you're going to slice it. The living standards depends on the country, which will make things and relies less on imports, will have a higher living standards. Okay, the more you import, the lower your living standards will get. Okay, so that's the dilemma.
You know, Frank, I want to share with you because we all recently had a holiday weekend where people were with their families during Passover and Easter. And I had the opportunity of sitting with a family relative of mine who's in the real estate business. And he shares with me how a client of his retired and bought for herself a nail salon, where they do the nails.
Yes.
And so she buys a nail salon. And she spent $150,000 buying this business, a turnkey business, all the equipment, the space, all of it all ready to go. She's now recently putting it on the market for sale, which is how my friend in the real estate business learned of it. And I asked the question, why? And he said, because now that she owns the business, she can't get anybody to work. So my question for you is this, Frank, is that a function of fewer people that are skilled to work? Or is it fewer people really willing to work? What would your gut tell you today?
Well, we in schools, we got to have a value system. Okay, without that, what are our values? Okay, and that's totally a miss. So the value system is, what can you do? Can you have a positive input to the country? And you gotta mark down what are the values. Okay.
Well, that's important. I'm making notes here because every time you speak, I not only listen, I learn. I not only listen, I learn. I want to share with you another quote, Frank, because I'm excited to get to the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurs. And this is a great segue into it. As I continue on a quote that you had said earlier on, you said that we must not destroy the capitalistic system. You said the greatest system ever devised for creating wealth, let small businesses, 300 employees or fewer, operate the capitalistic way with no business tax and very few regulations. You went on to say that when small businesses grow to more than 300 employees, they must share their profits with their workers. By doing so, workers themselves become capitalists. So I feel like what we have is really not just an economic crisis, it's a crisis of capitalism at hand. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, so basically, when you look at the worrisome thing is, basically you got two economic systems in the world right now. You got the Chinese and the Russian system, that's what we call the communistic system, and you got the capitalistic system. The Chinese system, we got to realize 10% of the population in China and Russia are part of the military. Another 10% of the population is what I would call the super bureaucrats. So the 20% tell the rest of the 80%, you have to don't step over certain lines, otherwise there are problems. So do we want to live on a system like that, right? So no. So the capitalistic system is, I think, about 1% of the population in the States and in Canada will own about 70% of the wealth, right, in the United States and Canada. So we have here 1% basically tell the 99%, look, you got all the freedom in the world. You're also free to be hungry. The kid in inner city Detroit, the human charter of rights has very little meaning. He's only free to be hungry. So anyway, the very key is, and we know from history that the socialistic and communistic ideas are not that great for the economy. They're based on wealth distribution. First, we got to create wealth, otherwise there's nothing to distribute. And when we look back in history, when countries had the socialistic system is a little different than the communistic system. You have more freedom, but the state gets more and more involved, right? And in the communistic system, the state is heavily involved, and over and above, you have very little freedom.
You know, I'm going to go off script here a little bit because you've got me intrigued. As many of our viewers know, I share decades of relationship with you, and I've looked up to you for many of these years as my mentor, as a friend, as a colleague. And as we begin to do the work at the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, I want to pause for a moment. If I were to slow down financial distinctions, and this is going to come as a surprise to you, we haven't rehearsed this, you don't know what I'm about to say, but when we think of the terms money, wealth, and worth, Frank, for you, in the billions you've made, in the billions you produced, the many millionaires you created, and the thousands of opportunities it created for many countries around the world, do you see a difference between the terms money, wealth, and worth? What do you instinctively think to that?
Well, basically, we would have to analyze what does the capitalistic system provide to be provide. I'm saying it's we should not destroy it, right? Because it's the greatest source of wealth creation. All what I'm saying is let small business operate under the capitalistic system. But I rather say the free enterprise system, right?
Perfect.
Because the free enterprise basically is the foundation for the capitalistic system, right? Okay, so they should totally no business tax, right? And there are only a few regulations. So when we take a look back in maybe back about 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years ago, Canada was a great country. There was a great concern for the environment. There were good laws for safety, like you had to meet those rules, but the regulations, etc. Well, maybe I would say maybe just about 10%, right? Right now, according to the last survey, where a number of countries were analyzed, Canada has 100 bureaucrats per 1,000 people. The United States has 70 bureaucrats per 1,000 people, and Japan has 40 bureaucrats per 1,000 people. So I'm saying about 50, 60 years ago, you had practically had free enterprise in Canada, and I remember when I rented a small building, I put a sign up, tool and die business, open for business. I didn't need a permit. For quite a few years, I didn't need permits. Like came in, but there still were rules according to workplace safety, and there were still rules that you could not dump poison chemicals in your backyard, right? But we had practically just a few regulators, right?
Well, and you're a great living demonstration of an entrepreneur, if left untethered by regulatory and bureaucratic red tape, if I dare say, goes on to become a really great poster child for what you've come to call free enterprise. And this is probably why, Frank, you're not only the founder, but also the author to what I'd call a great new urban business philosophy on how to, in fact, grow a business that's cognizant of creating jobs, distributing the wealth, being responsible, not reckless, but more importantly, working with government rather than against it. When did it first strike you, Frank, that you were authoring, unbeknownst to yourself, because I'm sure you were in the midst of running Magna at the time, as its founder and its chairman, of course. But when did you realize that you had yourself a new business philosophy unfolding?
Well, life is it's an evolutionary process. So is business. It's an evolutionary process. And I've always said, society came a long way, from the caveman to the hunted, to the kings and to the servants, and to businesses and the bosses now and disgruntled employees. So that was part of it, right? So my thinking was, look, I don't need servants. If I want to interface with real people, which have some pride and some ambitions to get things done. So I treated. Again, I have to say, and maybe I said it before, but I have to say it over and over again, right? When I'm a tool and die maker by trade, right? You need tool and die making just about for everything. The glasses, you need special machinery, the pen, the photographic equipment. So anyway, when I arrived in Canada in '54, right, I didn't know anybody. I had $200 in my pocket, but I found a job relative soon in a small tool and die shop. There were about 10 people. And after a few months, the owner said, "Frank, you're doing a great job." And my chest swelled a little. And he said, I want you to be a partner of mine. It sounded nice. He was actually a nice man, but he never wrote it down. My feeling was, look, there's nothing to it to run a business. So I looked in the papers. I found a job where I got paid nearly double than the previous job, right? So after 3 years in '57, I had saved up $5,000. $5,000 in '57 was a fair amount of money, right? You could buy a small house, you could buy a small condo, or you could buy a small farm. So what I did with the 5,000, I rented a small building, and I bought a few used machines on a down payment, right? And so out I went hustling. I worked in the factories. I said, I'm very good in solving problems. If I can't solve the problems, they don't have to pay me. So obviously I solved problems because after 1 month I hired somebody. After 1 year I had 10 people. After 2 years, 20. Then the first evolutionary process set in. I noticed my foreman was a little different. I had a German fellow by the name of Herman as a foreman. So I asked him one of those days, "Herman, you're a little different lately. What's the matter?" Well, he said, "I wanted to talk to you anyway. I would like to start my own business." I said, "Yeah, I can sympathize with that." I said, "Let's talk tomorrow. Maybe we find a better solution." So that evening I was talking to myself. I said, if that foreman's got to leave me, that would stifle my growth. I didn't like that. The next reason was if that foreman's got to leave me, I got to do all the work myself. I liked it even less. And the third reason was if I hire a new foreman and I don't show him how business is run, I still got to do all the work myself. And if I hire a new foreman and I show them a business is run, after 1 or 2 years, the same thing will happen. They will start their own business. So anyway, to make a long story short, I said to him the next day, "Herman, why don't we build a new factory? You own 1/3, I own 2/3. And he looked at me and said, "You mean it?" I said, "Yes." We went right away to a lawyer, wrote it down, built the factory. That was his factory. He hustled, he worked, he was proud. Huh? And I said, "Gee, I was a young guy myself. I said, I got great money flow now." So I took the next foreman, over the next 2 years, I had 6 more foremen, right? And I created 7 factories with a reasonable the same setup, right? So I had cash flow, just great money flow, right? And I became philosophical, I remembered many things, the hardships, the thing here, I said, gee, if I gonna get the workers involved, I said I would even make more money and I would do a great deed. I could bet the workers would make more money, we could eliminate poverty. So I transferred the private company, the 7 factories, to a public company, right? And I put in a corporate constitution. The foremost principle in our corporate constitution was we predetermined how we allocate the profits. So 20% of the profits we allocated as a dividend for the shareholders. 10% went to the workers over and above their wages, and 6% went to management, and 7% went for research, 7% of the profits, and 2% of the profits went to charity. So when I put that profit sharing into place, the first year, our profits were up 40%, the second year, 100%, the third year, 200%. So by letting the workers share in the profits, I released an incredible energy of untold proportions. So the message I want to get across is, without workers, you can't make a profit. If you share the profit with them, you make more monies. So in essence, I'm saying we gotta let the workers participate to bake the economic pie. And so I'm not preaching to take away from the rich. I'm saying let the workers participate. This way we can bake a bigger economic pie and everybody will get a bigger slice. So that's really the essence of the economic charter, right? Let the workers participate, let the workers become capitalists.
I like that. And I've heard you recite this story, its history, and its significance many, many times, Frank. And this time, as I'm making notes, one of the things that really strikes me as remarkable is that it was through real life experiences that you came to become the author of today's urban business philosophy, which we've called fair enterprise, something that you've trademarked, you've published, and are well spoken on. And as I listen to you, even around the corporate constitution and where profits were shared with the co-workers, and in the first year, profits were up 40%, in the second year, 100%, in the third year, 200%. What I find remarkable that you just don't frame that as an economic win. You see the energy and the life force and the passion and the excitement and the enthusiasm and the joy and the loyalty and many other attributes, I'm sure, out of doing that for clients. Is this why you think you are such a highly admired, not only businessman, but an employer? Did you feel the joy of those seeking you?
I think I created a great economy. I made many millionaires, and a lot of workers could afford to buy homes, etc., etc. That's one thing, right? Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, when I look in the mirror, you gotta, yourself, and many times, I'm fortunate. I have a farm, right? So I live on a farm, and behind my house, I got a great forest. So sometimes on the weekends, I go for a walk, and I sit down on a stone, on a tree stump, and count my blessings. How great has life been to me? And I say always, what should I do to give back to life? And that's basically what drives me. And that basically came about that I want to see Canada being the first country in the world where Canada has an economic charter of rights.
Well, and let's get to that, because I think what's important for people to understand as we discuss over a nice fireside chat is that much of your giving back is not just philanthropy, it's not donating money. It actually lives in many forms, and one of which is the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship. Now, I want to read something to you, Frank, and I want to walk through this if I may. Much of your history in building Magna and the way you built it with the urban business philosophy, which you've come to call fair enterprise, which is the nucleus of what gave rise to the Canadian Economic Charter of Rights and Responsibilities, something you've founded, you've authored, and is published, is the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship is a very interesting extension of your life lessons in action. I want to read something that was prepared for your website, if I may, and I want to get your comments on it. What's amazing is that when folks visit the website, whether they're just getting started, they're students, newly arriving Canadians, or a Canadian that's discovered that they want to get into business for themselves, here's what they learn about the Academy. It says here that Frank Stronach started the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurs because he believes the present educational system is not geared to create entrepreneurs. It says that Frank Stronach, one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, the Academy is dedicated to helping aspiring business owners navigate the path to success using the same proven principles that Frank Stronach used. And I would have to assert that likely during your reign as both founder, CEO, and then chairman of Magna. How exciting is it for you to know that in an academy, people can learn from you digitally, in person, from time to time, in a way that works well for all?
Well, I called that system, which I registered in 1955, right? I called that system the fair enterprise system. Basically, it's the forerunner for an economic charter of rights, right? And its core principle is you got to share the profits with the workers, and thereby, if the workers know they get a portion, they're on the front line, they're constantly thinking, how can I make things better and cheaper, right? Because I do get a slice of the profits, right? So that's the whole idea. The whole idea was, if you share with the workers, you can make things better.
Well, and I know this is true because it's in the DNA of the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurs, which we call SAFE, just to keep the acronym in place. But when people ask what makes the Academy unique, one of the things that you've been quoted as saying is that it's unlike traditional business schools. The Stronach Academy doesn't just teach theory. It provides real-world, experience-driven knowledge based on your success and your track record, along with the formula. One of the things I love about that latter word, Frank, is formula. You are a highly published person where many of your great moments of genius and magic, whether it's the fair enterprise or the chartered of economic rights, whatever it might be, you're highly published. So much of this content is here. When I press you, and this is a question that you don't expect me to say, how would we say the Academy differs from other people teaching business, other people teaching entrepreneurs? What makes our Academy even that much more unique, knowing that you're behind it?
Well, the Academy is based on the fair enterprise principles, right? And it's in a way, it's kind of sad that not more companies operate under the fair enterprise principle, because the fair enterprise principle basically, like say, using the example is Magna, which I started, right? Where we allocate the profits, right, to the shareholders, to the workers, to management, to research, and to society. It's the. I think if there's a real formula, right, which we propose, the economic charter of rights, that small business could see, we can do so much better operating under those principles, right? And so I said to myself, look, I should make available to small businesses, how did I build a gigantic business from a small business up, right? Okay. So yes, we showed the final product, right, which is a company with 180,000 employees and in 40 billion in sales, and we had over 400 factories, right? And the factories were kept small, right? Small business. In the average, they had about 300 employees or less, right? So that again, that's part of the fair enterprise system. I like to see that factories don't get too large because people become in number. Okay, and so and the very key was that each factory was a separate profit center, right? We could not fire a manager, right? The manager, yes, we could if he would break the law, and if he would make for 2 years not a profit, then we could, right? So, and we give the factory managers, if they saw an advantage, they could run under the corporate umbrella. But if they saw they're better off outside, then we gave them the choice, right? Because we basically, the philosophy was you're the manager, your main job is to keep the employees happy, keep the shareholders happy, make a profit, and do it accordingly, stay within the law, and doing how can you be the most successful whatever you do, right?
Right.
So that's a huge incentive, right? Okay. So let me be more practical, right? We had a central coordinating office, right? Because we were one of the largest steel buyers in the world, one of the largest packaging material buyer, plastic, etc., right? So we negotiated with steel companies. What's the basic price for, let's say, 20 tons of steel, right? Okay. And so we let the managers know if they buy from XX Steel Company, there's a huge discount. But we didn't tell them they have to, because when you tell factory managers, you have to buy from that and that source, and all the next time he would say if things don't work, I was told I had to buy from Exxon. He would say the price was good, but delivery was bad. That's why my customers got a problem now. Next time we would say the price was good, the delivery was good, but the quality was not good. There always be another excuse. So we basically say to them, look, you do whatever you do to run your factory, and so you do whatever is best to keep the employees happy and make a profit. So this way, that's the best way. Anyway, it's a proven fact. Via that system, I was able to create 180,000 jobs, right? That's the whole idea about it.
Well, on that note, I want to slow down before we speed up, and as we continue to talk about the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship and the principles it was founded on and what makes it tick, is the function of people can sit back and think, oh my goodness, you built a business that produced $40 billion in sales, you employed over 180,000 people, and you had businesses in over 400 factory settings. That's way too big. That's not where I am. So here's what I love about SAFE, is that we focus on 3 categories of entrepreneurs. Those who wish to get started. They have a vision for being an entrepreneur. They just don't know where to get started. The second are those who wish to scale, those who want to understand how they can grow, replicate themselves, just like you did with Herman. And then the third is how to then have a plan for succession. How can they exit their business, as you did? Because, of course, it's one thing to be in the business. It's another thing to also exit the business. Frank, when you built the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship on the principles of fair enterprise, who did you have in mind? I talked about the categories of entrepreneurs, but is there a specific type of student or pupil you see the majority of coming to our academy?
I think basically what you have, I think the primary reason why people get up in the morning is they want to make a better life for themselves and their family, right? So usually, so when you get married and you have kids, that's a big responsibility, right? So I said to myself, I sure hope they don't go to hardships like I did, right? So can I do something to leave them to have a reasonable life, right? Okay. Like in my case, it was way beyond, right? But it started out with that purpose, right? But when I got on the roll, I said, gee, I could change society. I could change the world, right? By eliminating profits, by eliminating poverty, right? You change the world, right? Because there is so much poverty, right? Which it's beyond. It's okay. So it I could see that I embarked on a system which was totally different, right? Share with the employees, right? Build on the employees, tell them that they. So in essence, I told them, look, I walk that way. If you guys or women, if you walk the same way, if you copy that, you can do the same thing that I can, right? And that's the very key, right? Look, I don't want to be rich if I would need bodyguards, right? What kind of life would that be, right? I want to mix amongst people without really being pretentious and just be happy in life, right? Okay, but you cannot be happy if you see poverty, right? If you see hunger, if you see things, there's no way you can be happy, right? So that's why that gave me the thing that I should really focus and bring the whole idea, the whole philosophy, the whole way of doing the economy to the people, right?
Well, I want to underscore something you said earlier on in case we missed it, but eliminating poverty through profit sharing. This is precisely what you're speaking of. And I'm smiling, and as you're speaking, I couldn't help but feel warm and fuzzy inside, because when you speak of terms like walk like me and let me show you the way, what term comes up for me is mentorship. I mean, I think the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, as it focuses on students and existing business owners, and we'll get to what they get in a moment, what I sense is not just teachings, it's not just philosophy, it's not just your urban business philosophy, it's not just the insights and the history and your track record and all of the wonderful data and all that comes with the recollection of what gave rise to one of the greatest companies in history, Magna. I hear mentorship, and it excites me because I firsthand see what mentorship can do. In fact, that's how I met you. I met you through a business program in my high school years, where you were our business mentor and you came into our classroom on a regular basis. And I don't know if you remember this, you had way more hair, Frank, even though you have a good full head of hair now. But you came in with a big, it looked like, Vidal Sassoon walked into the room, and big, great hair, and you had an energy and you had a beautiful clique of people. But you came and you inspired us. You came and you provided us the permission to have vision. You came in as a living demonstration of what's possible with only $200 in your pocket and a constant grumble of the belly being hungry. And you gave us students through mentorship, not just an inspirational talk, not just another high-flying billionaire in the process. You came in really wanting to ignite the energy, the flame inside everyone's hearts and minds in that room. And you did for me. Do you believe that the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship is another great extension of that experience you gave me all those decades ago? Do you feel that for students and business owners, this is another way to get mentored by Frank Stronach?
It unfortunate that, or you call it unfortunate, or it might be necessary. We have to change the way we do things, huh? And I think over the next years, the economy will be suffering because we didn't focus on making things, right? And we just kept printing monies, and practically everybody had a reasonable living standard, but it's all by printing more monies, right? And you cannot do that forever, right? So it doesn't. you can only, you got to do things in order to, right? Look, a farmer's got to work if he wants to have a crop, right? I mean, you got to good work, and it's got to be all the way around. You got to work, right?
But Frank, if I may interject, do you agree with the importance of mentorship? You do agree with that?
Yes, yeah. Well, basically, yes. When we look back in history here, we had vice councils, right? Okay, where the vice council kind of gave forward the ideas to younger people, like you got to do XXX, you gotta think about it, be fair, be upright, but they say, look, but you gotta look after yourself and you gotta look after your family. And so we gotta create a value system, right? And that's got to be understood. And you could start from grade 6 up, right? Okay, from grade 1 to grade 6, you teach them how important is what you eat, right? And then you could get into the economy, et cetera, et cetera. So it's we need a value system.
I love that. I love that. And speaking of value, with the short period of time we have left, it's amazing how fast the time that we have together flies by. We've been talking about the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship. We've been talking about how the fair enterprise philosophy is at the heart and soul of that particular initiative. We've spoken about how it's also the underlying principle of your Canadian Economic Charter of Rights and Responsibilities that really is the catalyst for reclaiming, recreating, reimagining Canadian economic sovereignty. With regards to SAFE, the Stronach Academy, we know there's two bodies of participants. We'll have students and we'll have business owners. Now, let's talk about students for a moment. And I have to say that resonates with me given my history with you. But it appears to me that for mentorship by the great Frank Stronach and your team, which includes myself, is that it's only $200 a year. And so for this annual membership, students who actually join the Academy get 2 copies of your bestsellers, 2 books that you've been published. They get to have a copy of The Magnum Man and The Road to Economic Freedom, but they also get to submit, and I love this part, they get to submit via email 3 questions. They're permitted 3 questions where they have to submit less than 500 words, so get to your point real quick. And we have about 30 days to answer because we get, of course, inundated with lots of questions. We want to make sure we don't disappoint people. But people can really ask questions of you and the team. And most important, they get to attend live webinars on a monthly basis featuring yourself and your faculty, which of course I'm included, and our team from Steve to Ivana and others. Tell me, before I get to the most interesting part where 24 Academy students get to be randomly selected and attend a luncheon with you, first of all, what excites you most about this student outreach initiative? What excites you most about it?
Well, what excites me most that I think by doing that, we change society, right? We create a value system. We got the economy rolling, right? So that excites me most, and most of all, I think we can eliminate poverty.
But I have to say, and I love what you just said, Frank, and I don't mean to sound rude or short. You love being with students. I've watched you in lecture halls. I've watched you in universities, in colleges, on campuses. You love being in front of students because I know that you have such a massive respect for the stage of life they're at and how moldable they remain and still are seeking great knowledge, great leadership, great vision. I see you excited. Would you admit that you're excited when you're in front of students?
Well, it's, see, when I talk with students, I know their mind's still open, right?
Yes.
Well, usually it's an older crowd, their mind, well, from time to time, I try to provoke their mind to get to it, right? But it's usually their mind set, right? So the great thing is it's a brain which isn't set yet with the students, and thereby you hope to make headway, and you hope to transmit a philosophy which is for their own benefit.
I like that. I like that a lot. And you know, speaking of students, participants in the academy is devised in two categories. Again, as we help people start, scale, or succeed in their business, as in succession planning, we know where students will fit. We know that they'll want to get their ideas to what is their alignment like to the very things that they love, their gifts, their talents, their skills, as you call it, their affinity. Helping them decide on industry, what company, what business, what sector they like to specialize in. But you also cater to small business owners. And for $400 a year, they get the exact same benefits that students do. The difference, though, is that they'll be asking us far more complex questions, likely tapping into some of your fair enterprise thinking. What excites you there?
Well, let me address maybe the students, and
Please.
then I quickly go to small business, right? What excites me there, first of all, the students could ask 3 questions, right? And we try to answer those quickly, but it could take up to 1 month. So that's, when you could ask an experienced person a question, how did you do it? That's quite something, right? So you have that. Then we have a monthly newsletter, right? Where we table the interesting questions. Let's say we might have in a newsletter maybe where we have the answers for 20 questions, right? Okay, so that's what a lot, because, and then we have the live web seminar, right? Where randomly people are picked between 20 and 30 people, right? Where the team, including yourself, including myself, where we would have lunch with the students, and then we would set 2 hours aside where we say, look, you can ask questions now, right? And via the internet, maybe many thousands could see the same. Could follow the program and benefit from it, right? So so we answer questions, we have web seminars, and a newsletter, right? So it's I think over the time, then many questions might be similar, right? Because we hope to serve thousands of students. The first thing we're going to tell them, look, when you have it in mind to start out something on their own, number one is you gotta zero in. What's your affinity? What do you like? So let us know maybe the 3 things you would like to do. Then we tell you, find a job, right, in a company which make things what you like, right? Okay, and then I say, look, try to understand, try to learn, try to be good employees, and try that you understand, right? And maybe after 1 year, you could say, gee, I've been involved in making XX products, and I think I'm ready. I could make them on my own, right? Okay. So this is sort of an evolutionary process, right?
I like that.
The way I started, the way things happen. Let's say that's with the students, right? First is the affinity, then you have, and after that when you start out, we could be helpful, right? With practical ideas, the way we did it. Right? We always refer. So Frank Stronach started out, he's the only employees, and there's 180,000, but we know that how that functions, and that we, at the Fair Enterprise System, we give a very great oversight in our program, right? That they understand what they could reach, right? Okay, so that's the one. And for small business, we do the same thing. Small business, they could ask. Each small business owner by the way, they get 2 books in regards to the economy. Then they get, we answer three questions for everything here. And then again, they will be part of a web seminar where we have lunch And then we set 2 hours aside where they can ask all kinds of questions which we would answer in a practical way. And they get a monthly newsletter with the most interesting questions which we tabled the previous months. And so it's a great learning tool. It's a great you get examples from practical experiences. None of that is taught in schools or in universities. But most of all, when they really get into it, right? We show how students could get involved, how small business. But we tell them, look, read the thing in regards to the fair enterprise, because the whole thing is based on that. Treat your employees with respect. Get them as your partners. Don't get them as your servants. And when you start out, make small steps till you feel secure that you got a solid ground underneath you. Then you make bigger steps, right? Okay. But most of all, I think I've accumulated a lot of wisdom. I'm saying I'm using a cup of wisdom, and I think it's so important also to have common sense. I use a cup of wisdom, a cup of common sense, and I think by spreading that around, I think you will give the people the right direction. That's the key, right? Where we can provide the right direction usually when you start out on your own with no thing, you could make a lot of mistakes. But the key is that we can point them to make less mistakes and get in the right direction.
Well, I think that's the power of the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, which is we bring in students, we're bringing in business owners at various levels and at different stages in their business efforts. But in the few minutes we have left, here's what I want to say. I know that we have a very special exercise that we invite both students and businesses to, that on a regular basis, we invite 24 students and 24 small business owners to a live in-person dining experience with you. And what I love about all these live events is it gives rise to a creative collaboration. You said this earlier, and I'll put words in your mouth, Frank, so forgive me, but I love the cross-pollination of thinking, where you said there'll be an interface of ideas. Young people will learn from those who are established, and those who are established might get some new ideas from those who are still open-minded. And so this creative collaboration is one of the things that the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship is going to induce. That to me becomes very exciting. Are you excited about that too?
Yeah, I'm excited. I want to point out that we have separate seminars with the students which want to start out.
Understood.
Because if the people which have small businesses say, gee, we passed that stage.
Understood.
Right? So time is important too. It's important for students. It's time. So we have separate seminars, right? But which could be also viewed by the students. Because it's on internet, it could be viewed by small business. And so in 2 hours, we would get a lot of questions, which would be applicable to many, many business people.
So forgive me, I'll slipstream with you one more time. When it comes to the networking, when it comes to hearing from others, the creative collaboration is where students get to hear the established business owners from a distance, perhaps during our live webinars, whenever we open up the lines. This is what I mean. So I understand we won't have it in the same room at the same time, teaching the basics of getting your business started when you've got accomplished business owners in the same room. So point taken. When it comes to understanding small businesses, it is a requirement that you're under 300 employees. That's what qualifies you as a small business.
Yes.
Can you envision us ever working with larger business owners at SAFE?
Yes, larger too, because every small businessman wants to be a large business owner. But I'm saying, just have smaller operations. You could own them, right? But decentralize it, and give the mandate to people to make decisions.
You know, you once said that basically there are no bad employees, only bad managers. And I have to think that managers are like leaders. So this becomes really a leadership development effort.
Let me correct it. I do say many times there's no bad workers, only there's less capable managers, right? Okay. Because with the right thing, you can teach them, right? Sometimes that's why you start out, if you start out with 20 employees, you can, look, if things don't work, you got a small problem. But if you start out right away with 300 employees, then you have a large problem, right? Large problems more difficult to solve, right? Go step by step, rely, like we walk you through the way I did things when I had 20 employees, maybe 60 employees, maybe 200 employees, maybe 500 employees, maybe 1,000, maybe 5,000. So there's different stages, right? Which we look, my main interest is to get rolling, get the economy rolling, get the economic charter of rights in, and I think and give small businesses the hand, the lead, to get off the red tape and get off a lot of the regulations, and we have the economy will be soaring, will be blooming.
You know what I hear, my friend, in closing? It feels like it's an old conversation proven true, but it has a new life force. And it takes the form of your Canadian Economic Charter of Rights and Responsibilities, but it also embodies your fair enterprise philosophy at the heart and soul of the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and the fair enterprise system I practiced for 60 years. So it was an evolutionary process.
Well, and the proof is in the pudding. I mean, 40 billion in sales,
yes.
Over 180,000 employees.
And always have $1 billion cash in the bank.
Well, I don't know how many business owners would appreciate that, but having $1 billion cash and zero debt is an ideal business philosophy to run by.
That it's easily, look, we give life examples what you can do, right? Just copy what we think here.
That's right. Follow in your footsteps, as you would say. Follow in your footsteps.
Follow in the footsteps.
Frank, what a lovely conversation. I thank you again for your time.
Okay, great. It's always great to talk with you.
Folks, this has been Richard Dolan in conversation with our very own Frank Stronach. If you want to learn more about all of his ideologies, philosophies, ranging from the Canadian Economic Charter of Rights and Responsibilities or the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, whether you're a student getting started or a business owner that you're stalled, stuck, or stopped and wish to do things a new way, the Frank Stronach way, you can give us a little note by writing us at our email address provided in the link below. Until next time, we'll join Frank Stronach live in a conversation with an icon.